Hello, hello, soulful seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. You know, I've got a brand new guest for you today. I have the lovely Jen Chaney. Jen has had an incredible journey. It's been a very soulful journey. We're going to dig into what that means momentarily. But Jen is an intuitive psychic medium. She's a twin flame grief support coach and certified spiritual life advisor. And Jen, what got you started on that path?
Oh, hello. Many things, but a few years ago, late in 2023, I experienced um, a series of losses. And that is really what kicked off the ultimate dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening. And that put me on my path to do what I'm doing now, which is helping others through their grief and their transcendence and all of those things to really help them get through it.
So you got the Healer Starter Kit bundle.
I did.
I was really lucky. I will say that. I had a very long, slow development from the point that I was like early childhood. So nothing felt rushed or too pressured for me. I'm kind of really grateful for that because some of these souls who come in and take like the full advanced mode, let's go. You
Absolutely.
guys are way courageous and brave. I really honor you for that. I'm lucky
Yeah.
that it was the pace that it was for me.
Yeah,
But what was
absolutely.
that like to just wave after wave have all of those activating events? And how, at what point did you start to recognize, oh, this is an opportunity? This isn't just,
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to say there were some things, along the way, little breadcrumbs in past years, because I've had and experienced a lot of loss throughout my life, and I think that my soul really needed to shake me this time, because there were little inklings kind of along the way that made me realize, that there was more to this, and I knew those things. It wasn't until I was really, really jolted, and that just kind of spiraled into there must be more. Where did they go? Uh, and then so post loss, it really opened my eyes to, I was just at a really, really dark time. I spent a few months to where I just shut the entire world out. I didn't really want to, I just didn't want to be a part of the world anymore. I didn't want to be here. And I was kind of in between these two worlds, it felt like, and I was at the same time experiencing tremendous synchronicities, things that were kind of felt like something was trying to get my attention. And then so I started down that path to kind of learn more about why and where is this coming from, and what are they trying to tell me? And so,
some of
yeah,
those little synchronicities that you were starting to notice?
a lot of numbers, a lot of things that were in tune with my thoughts. I would have to say that was one of the earliest synchronicities were the constant reoccurring numbers. I would wake up in the middle of the night and just feel this urge to look at my phone and it would be 4:44, and there's just no way that is random, it was so much in my face that I thought, what are they trying to tell me? And then that really just kind of led me down that rabbit hole. And I'm glad that it did because I was in a really dark place. But now I see that that was the journey that my soul was meant to take, and that's what needed to happen to put me on this path. And now I can do what I love to do and lead a more fulfilling life.
I think a lot of people have those initial sequence of events. They have a really life shifting, changing loss. They have things start to fall apart, and they don't see that it's part of something bigger.
Right,
I know,
right,
at least for myself, I certainly didn't. When I went through that first divorce, I did not see how that was going to be for my benefit at all.
right.
Yeah, but I think it absolutely needed to happen, and then along the way, I did have little synchronicities and things too. There were a couple of dreams that validated of, "Oh, you need to go have this experience. This is on time for your soul's mission."
Right,
And I
right.
think those little moments can kind of fortify our systems. They can kind of embolden us. They can give us that little bit of inspiration or courage to follow the crazy thing that we're not supposed to do, or, that we
Absolutely.
maybe wouldn't have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And dreams were very significant early on for me as well, because the dreams that I would have, there were a few where I mean, they were very much like another dimension, some sort of oasis, if you will, but it was so real. And I don't know how my mind would have made that up, especially because I was in such a dark place. It was almost like this escape, but it was leading me towards to know that there is more, and there are other dimensions, and there's a lot more to explore. It's endless.
And so that's when you started to have those first couple of glimpses of what happens when you lose someone that you love.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And where did you go from there? What happened next?
So one of the very earliest things that I knew, that I might be picking up on something internally. I've always been sort of like an overthinker, but I would have a lot of thoughts that would come and go, and they would seem so random, and it would say, where is this coming from? What am I picking up on? So I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. And I've always been fascinated with mediumship and animal communication. And so one of the very earliest things was, in my darkest time, I would just sit by the window, and I would just watch outside, and just, try to soak up the beauty, and try to look for things. And of all things, I noticed actually that animals, birds, squirrels, I was getting impressions from them. And that led to kind of say, well, what if I stretch this a little bit further, and I ask them something, and then I would kind of get another impression, and I'm like, this is insane. And there were things a lot to do with animals really early on. I remember I would try to do things, for other people to make myself feel better, because I was in such a bad place. And my neighborhood actually had some stray cats, and it was winter time, and I was building some cat boxes. So, and I'm sitting there, and I'm working on them all day, and I'm thinking about these cats that I'm going to make these styrofoam boxes, and maybe they'll have shelter. And then when I went to take them outside, there were two cats sitting there waiting, like they knew that I had been working on this, and that never had that, anything like that happen before. But that was really the earliest signs. And then from there, I actually went and visited a medium. One of the first things that she told me was, she said, "You do what I do." I said, "Well, really?" Because I've been wondering, I've been getting some things. And she was kind enough to actually kind of quiz me. And she said, "I'm going to tell you, I have a friend, and I'm going to give you her name, and I want you to tell me something about her." And automatically in my third eye, I saw books. And here, she's an avid reader, an author. And so it was really eye opening. And then from there, I just kind of started throwing out information anytime I could, to kind of see what I was getting. And at that time, I was still, I was working for the county, for the government, and at a desk job. And I just kind of started practicing around with my coworkers and seeing what I could get. And I was just amazed. I couldn't even believe it myself. Everything was so spot on. And it was like, yes, yes, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what brings me joy. Nothing else but this is really bringing me joy. So I just jumped all in.
Yeah. And then, where did you go from there? Just starting to test the abilities to understand how you work better and finding
Right.
limits or lack
Reading.
thereof?
I just wanted to get as much information as I possibly could. I really wanted to see, because I had always watched, some other psychic mediums and how they worked. I was always fascinated by it, but and a lot of those things click, and we're all different in the way that we read. So, but I just wanted to learn. I couldn't learn enough. I just really, really engulfed myself in all of that, and kind of seeing how I could kind of use some of those tools to bring forward the information that I was getting.
I really feel like that is a trademark of spiritual awakening, is that unquenchable thirst for knowledge. And it's that knowledge that's not in your standard textbook. It's the
Right.
deeper, the questions
Is
of the soul, for sure. Yeah.
absolutely. And Carl Jung played a huge part in all of that. I mean, when I was getting my undergraduate degree in psychology, well, in that class, I had kind of grazed over that subject. I knew about him, and I knew that that was kind of the grandfather of synchronicity. And then it just unraveled a lot from there. And I really learned about, the awakening path, the dark night of the soul. I resonated so deeply with that. And that really helped me along the way.
And that was before the loss had happened. So it just kind of goes
It
to show
was,
you there were some little key cornerstones of your foundation.
there were,
Similar to
yeah,
mine, there was lots from early childhood. And it's like, of course, I'm doing what I'm doing and not doing something else. All of it was there, but you had those little key things in place that maybe you didn't kind of look at in that moment because you had other goals and aspirations.
right, right. And now I feel like that was kind of part of my soul and, showing me these things, but it wasn't enough to really awaken me to what was out there. And it's not all pretty, after that dark night of the soul, and even during it, there was so much grief, so much despair, and a lot of, that led me to my shadow work. Yeah. So, and through that shadow work is really where I started to find myself. And as Carl Jung would say, the self-actualization, individualization, that's really where I started to find myself. And then a lot of things surfaced, and I think that's partly where I discovered you, because I thought, I was still having some panic, some things that I just couldn't get to the bottom of. And then I had the IEMT therapy, which was great with really getting to some of those.
And it still makes me laugh to this day because you could have seen any IEMTer.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
you pick the one that teaches mediumship and that lives this life regularly?
Isn't that something? Yeah,
I
it's great.
remember laughing that day and telling you, yeah, you definitely got the right one.
Absolutely.
It's
I was
priceless.
guided.
And so that helped facilitate some of the healing that you needed to. For the
It did.
people in the audience who aren't familiar with Dark Night of the Soul, how would you explain that for them? In case they might be going through it and they don't know that
Yeah,
term.
yeah. So it's really just where your soul, I think it's your soul trying to wake you up, obviously, but it's at your lowest point, the lowest point that you can really imagine in your life, where everything's dark. I mean, it really is just despair. From there, that darkness is where you really look for the light, because you just, you can't end it. You must go on, and that there has to be a purpose. And I thank my guides and my spirit team for the synchronicities, because, not that I was suicidal, but it really was this constant reminder that, hey, like, there's really a purpose to this, and so I would just really always recommend that, you look for those things, look for the little nuances and the repetitive things, or the things that you might say, well, that's just a coincidence. But now I know there are no coincidences, and it's really just your soul, lining you up. But yeah, I think that's the only other way for me to explain it. It's just utter despair.
I like that you explain it as it's your soul waking you up. I tend to go from the opposite route, and it's just because of the experience that I had with it myself. And for me, it's more of the death of the ego. The ego tends to tell us that things have to be a certain
Yeah,
way. And when I get clients that come and see me who are in the midst of that dark night of the soul, sometimes I will rebrand it kind of like Robert Ohotto, one of my favorite authors, used to do. He'd say it was Dark Night of the Ego, because it's the ego that's dying and the ego's vision of how your life should be that's now being
absolutely.
deconstructed. And the more that you cling to it and you hold on to it, the more painful it gets, because it is the soul redirecting to say, okay, that's
Right.
cute. Now it's time to do what you were planted here for.
Exactly. And that's kind of the longer version of it, because it's not a quick thing. It's a process, the dark night of the soul. It's a complete rebranding of who you are and a birth of who you are. It's not a new you. I mean, it is a new you, but it's not even a new version of the old you. And so a
I
lot of
think for a
things
lot of
fall
people,
apart.
that's the moment where they're like, "Oh, I'm not just this. There's more." And then they start
Right.
to have that realization of, "Ah, I'm a soul. I'm having a spiritual experience in a human body." And they
Right.
open to those kinds of concepts more. At least that was my experience.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So it's a bigger awakening moment. And so you came through the dark night of the soul. You used a little bit of IEMT that helped you.
Mhm.
Then I think as we were working on one of your IEMT sessions, you're like, I'm booked to go to Arthur Findlay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I just on a whim, right after um, right after the new year, I started thinking, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously. And so, there was that whole year where I thought, okay, I think I can do this. There might be a way. And the more I just searched and I one random day I thought, I'm just gonna go to a school. I want to take this seriously.
One random day. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, it was just on a
no,
whim.
not one random day.
Yeah, yeah. It just
It was directly in alignment. Your soul is like,
yeah,
here next.
right. It really was because I didn't even know anything about Arthur Findlay College before I booked it. I just thought,
For those who don't, how would
yeah.
you describe it?
Well, it's the spiritualist school in England. It's located in Essex, England, and they've been around for quite some time. But that is the place to learn about spiritualism. It's the home of the Spiritualist National Union, and it's magical. I do know that it was life changing. It really was.
That's a more accurate way of describing it than typically I do. I usually say it's the Disneyland of mediums
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You could say that.
or the Hogwarts of mediumship.
Right, right,
And that is a place where people go to learn. The beautiful thing about spiritualism and mediumship is that you do not have to practice spiritualism to be a medium, and you don't have to vice versa either.
right. That's correct. Yeah, yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, spiritualism is it's hard to explain a little bit, but it is a system of belief, not necessarily a religion, but kind of a spirituality that is built on looking for evidence of proof after life. And so there are mental mediums, emotional mediums, there are physical mediums who do just that, and they incorporate things like healing in their services. Really, really cool experience to have. Did you get to
Yeah.
attend any of the
Well, you mean which attend?
spiritualist services that they might have
Oh,
had?
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
There was services, which I loved, and I know now that spiritualism is really where my heart is. I grew up semi-religious, went to a Baptist church, and so I always kind of picked my beliefs from here or there, but I really found that to be my home that really resonated because they share a lot of the same values that I share. So it was just amazing. Yes.
Yeah. It is quite unique. It is very, very different. I had an opportunity to go a couple of times, once in Lilydale when I went for training because they hold regular spiritual services and healing services there too. And then when I lived in Boston, Massachusetts, Rita Berkowitz also held services in, I want to say, Braintree First Spiritualist Church. And then there were some also on one of the nearby reservations too. It is quite an experience.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think for those of us, especially the ones who grew up with mediumship as children, they're like, oh, finally somewhere where I fit as a puzzle piece.
Right. Right. A lot of demonstrations that, which is very fascinating. It's fun. I enjoyed a lot of that.
And it's a mediumship demonstration when you want a mediumship demonstration, not just because someone's walking through the grocery store and has the sudden urge
Right.
to throw it at you without boundaries. I talk
Right.
about that a lot because really there are times and spaces to practice mediumship. I mean, we're going through people's lives, their connections, and it really, really bugs me when someone doesn't practice healthy boundaries with that.
Yeah, because it is so sacred and it is such a sensitive subject for some people. Some people are just raw with emotion. And so you don't want to ruin their day, you know. So I definitely get that. I'm not brave enough to approach anyone. I mean, I did, like I said, play around with some of my ex coworkers and things like that. But these were people I knew, you know.
Yeah. People we knew who were open and in a safe environment to receive that, not someone who has to get in their car and drive while they're emotionally dysregulated. I don't want that responsibility
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's, you say it's not brave, but I think it's appropriate and you're practicing really healthy boundaries with your mediumship at that point.
Yes.
And so when you went to Arthur Finley, how did that impact your journey? What was that like?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, I didn't really have any expectations. I just thought this is where I'm going to go to learn. And I really underestimated how much of an experience it was, you know, that I would have because I had one of the best tutors there. Her name was Wendy Lyon. And the room that we were in, we got to be in the library at the college, and it holds such great energy there. And when I say magical, I mean, it really was. It felt like the veil was very thin. And so being amongst, you know, other mediums that were developing the same as myself, that was great. And so we spent a lot of time practicing with each other.
That in itself is huge.
It is.
Having done mediumship training, had the experience, but also facilitating mediumship training, you see it all the time. The more mediums are together, the stronger we get to hold and bridge the vibration. And so messages can come through so much more effectively. And then the fun thing is you get to play little games. You get to see who picks up on what, because there might be a medium who's really, really powerful with the clear empathy. And you may have someone else who's just very claircognitive, and then yet another one who's good at, like, the medical intuition. And so it's fun to kind of piggyback and ping pong to
It
deliver a
is.
message.
It
Yeah.
is. And then, you know, by the end of it, because we're reading each other, you know, over and over. And so it really helped kind of stretch our capabilities because there's a lot of things that are at surface level and, you know, you can pick up on it. But once you read the same person, you know, so many times in a row, and you have to really dig into more things, the layers, and play around with things like colors and music and things like that. It was wonderful.
Would you say it becomes more evidential at that point that you're really going to spirit more often to say, oh, okay, give me something that no one else is going to know so they know this is you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the goal, you know, and even with clients, you know, you want them to know for sure that you have their love.
Yeah, I think that's a key part of it. And believe it or not, I don't know that all people consider it this way, but when I went through training, one of the things they told us is you're not responsible to bring through a message. Spirit
Right.
doesn't always come with a message. Your
Right.
job is to validate that spirit is there and who they were, what their life was to the best of your ability. And if they have a message, great, that's bonus.
Right. Well, a lot of times the evidence is the message. Hey, we're here, you know? Yeah.
It can be, and they definitely choose specific things because they could choose so many things about themselves, but they're choosing one or two specific things that hit a point.
Yeah. Yeah. And leaning into that and really being able to paint the picture as to why they brought this forward and the significance of that, you know, that's usually the message. And I just really, really enjoy being that for someone and being the channel and the medium.
Yeah, that really is an honor to be in that position. And it's a position that takes integrity. I've seen mediums who've lost their abilities over the years, and it was because they did things that they shouldn't have been doing. They were prying for information, they were not respecting boundaries.
Yeah,
They were
I
kind of
do have
emotional
that.
vampires, and their abilities just kind of whoop, dried up and gone. And I really
Right,
think it's because they have to be also doing self work. A medium is only ever going to give a message as clear as they are inside. And
right.
that's just a reality. We have to be doing our own work all the time.
Right. And
Yeah.
we have to raise our vibration to, and they have to lower theirs and kind of meet there. And if you're not doing it for the right reasons, well, then you're not going to raise your vibration enough, and they're not going to waste their time on trying to lower theirs.
Yeah. So it is really beautiful, incredible work. There is nothing else like it. And it does come with extreme catharsis and healing, as you've learned firsthand.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It takes a lot of looking at yourself and, and even just empathizing with people, really being able to come from a place of saying, I know what this is like. I really, really empathize and sympathize with you, and so I don't think that mediums who haven't experienced tremendous loss are doing the greatest service, because they just can't understand, and the right way to deliver a message, because you want to be really thoughtful in the way that, you handle that.
And there are some precarious situations that can come up with mediumship when it
There
comes to
are.
people's loved ones in spirit, because their personality is still intact. And if you have someone who is a bit of a jokester, a bit of a trickster, like to
Yeah.
embarrass their loved one,
Yeah.
that tendency doesn't just always go away. So you can really find yourself in some really interesting situations of, how am I going to deliver this message and still be respectful and have it be a
Right.
healing situation and not one where the client is just like, wow, why do you know that? And I'm never coming here again kind of situation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Some of those more uncomfortable ones, they tend to bring it through with me in pieces, so that I'm not kind of like, well, here's this bit of information. Here's this bit of like, what's kind of going on here? And then they'll say, and it's like, I'm so glad I didn't have to be the one to bring that through.
I've had some precarious ones over the years, and I will never forget them as a result, because it's like, oh, there is no way to soften that. Thank you for that.
Right.
Wow. I couldn't have found someone else to deliver that one, huh?
Right. But at the same time, it really brings through, like you said, their personality, and that can be so valuable to your sitter. It really can. Just to know that
Immensely.
you have them.
I actually wasn't going to deliver that message, but I had another friend who was there who was also a medium. She's like, no, you have to give that
Yeah,
message.
too.
And she's like, just trust me. And I did. And so when I told this really young widow who'd lost her person no less than a year before, what the message was, she's like, that's what he used to do. That was his personality. He would purposely do things to make me blush. And it's like,
No.
now I know it's him. There you go.
Yep. That's great. Yeah, I love that.
So Arthur Finley helped you become a medium. How long did it take roughly for you?
Well, when I set out on this journey, I told Spirit, okay, if this is what you want me to do, I'll give it a solid year, and I'll do as many readings as I can for free, and just really practice, learn, and see. And so that's what I did. And then I resigned from my position as county worker. And then I've just spent the last year kind of all in building my business, trying to gain clients, and just kind of put information out there to help people, because at the end of the day, that's really all I've ever wanted to do. And that's really what this is about for me. So
What
the last
are
2 years.
some of your favorite clients to read for? What are their life situations that are unfolding, and how are you able to help them?
Hmm.
And if you have like a favorite case study or something, you can say it, just don't say their name.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me kind of take notes here. Trying to think of some good ones right off the bat. One of the earlier ones that I had, which is still one of my favorites, it was actually a coworker of mine. And I had learned that it was the anniversary of his father's passing, and he wasn't necessarily open to the spirit world.
Those are
But
the best.
yeah, yeah. And that's I think why it stuck with me. And he was just having a hard day, and I learned of why. And then I sat in silence, and I got some things. And sometimes I like to write things down ahead of time, because I sometimes the impressions come through so fast. And I was getting like pictures of clouds and airplanes, and then stripes. And what I would do early on was I would get the information, and then I would sit with it. And if it kept coming back up, then I would deliver it, because I really wanted to be sure. and I just couldn't let go of this. I mean, the anxiety was building. Spirit was like, you're not going to think about anything else, until I just had to get it out. And it came to be, I learned that his dad was a paratrooper in the military. That, because he was a skeptic, it was, it really shook me, because you can actually make a difference in someone's life. That was one of the earliest that I really really resonated with, and I think of him often because of that.
That was a big part. It was a big
It was
part
a
of who
big
he
big part of
was.
my
It was
journey.
his
Yeah,
identity. That was his profession, his life.
yeah, yeah. A lot of during the even practicing, I've gotten. I didn't realize how much healing there was in me getting readings constantly, and so that's been a big part of getting going and learning about, kind of, with other mediums, how to work, how to read into something. Yeah. So, let me see if I can get into anything here. I know I've taken the last couple weeks off, and now I'm just kind of out of sorts a bit.
But it sounds like you have an idea. You have the idea that the skeptical people who also need the healing and maybe aren't aware of it tend to be the ones that you get the most enjoyment out of.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really what propels me, to do that. I've brought through so many loved ones. Another reading it was actually a friend of mine, where I was able to bring through her daughter that had passed on, and she had passed on at a really young age, and that was so healing. And it was, and I feel so honored at the same time. I'm just, because I didn't know much about her, but I thought, well, let me just see what I can get. And I know that was extremely healing. And still, I think I've only ever brought through two children.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a totally different dynamic and level of healing that needs to happen, and it's happening on both ends. And that's
right.
what makes it so profound. I've had the privilege of doing that a couple of times, and one of them was not anticipated at all. I wasn't doing a mediumship reading, that wasn't the intent of it. I think I was actually doing an emotion code session, and I was just sharing the impressions that I was getting. And then the person came back and said, wait a minute, go deeper on this one or two things, because I think you're picking up on something really important for me. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I think that when we step forward as intuitives, when we step forward as coaches, it's really important that we don't say, oh, I can't, or I don't know, if someone's asking you for something.
Right.
And instead we say, you know what, let me give that a shot and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
making promises, I don't know. And then just actually press and see if you can find the edge or the boundary of where your gifts end. Because what I've learned is often there isn't. There's a lot of self imposed boundary, there's a lot of self
Right.
imposed beliefs. But often when I just open and I allow, that's when some of the really big, deep abilities come through and the impressions get so much stronger, faster, and easier. But when we're working on someone who's lost a child, oof, I don't know that there's anything deeper than that, even
Yeah.
when it's people who've been married for almost a century. They have
Mhm.
a certain level of peace, but losing a child, there's nothing like that.
There's
And
not.
there's always a layer of, that parent wanting to know that there's not more that they could have done.
Right. Right. And
That
it
soul
is.
had other things that had to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just such a sacred bond. It just, you know, dealing with all past loved ones, you have this responsibility, but it feels even more so when it's a child. So, and
And then with
one
the
of
work that you do around grief, how does
yeah.
that factor in?
Well, I know that a lot of people, like I was early on, and I'm still transforming through grief. It's still comes in waves, but learning to kind of take that grief and move through it and transform it into something meaningful. A lot of your standard therapies and counseling. They don't really integrate spiritualism as much as some people need. And so I really enjoy, bringing that level of comfort to people who are experiencing grief. And also with the twin flame aspect of it, because that was one of the significant loss, the final of the three, in late 2023. And that really shook me. And so there wasn't a whole lot out there on that, but I did learn that for the few that I had come across, and even, like Reddit threads, things like that, that some of us do go on to do mediumship. And that is something that does happen. And so, I learned early on in this process that we experience those losses so that we can find ourselves, and I do believe that it's part of the bigger plan.
And the twin flame doesn't always have to be incarnated as that happens.
Right.
My previous friend and roommate, she actually experienced her twin flame just on the ethereal after they'd passed. So they never had an in-person relationship. They never had that experience of encountering each other while they were alive. And their whole relationship has been on the side of spirit, but she's gone on to write books and to do mediumship and to create programs just based on him being that catalyst for her. So it's a
That's
very
amazing.
common thing.
Yeah.
They're like an energy booster. I know I had a twin flame. We encountered each other in real life, and I'm glad that it
Yeah.
didn't go any further.
Yeah.
Because it was a dumpster fire. And you know what? At that point, for all intents and purposes, so was I. So it's fine.
Yeah. Well, that's common.
But there was something unspeakable that happened in terms of my intuition and psychic gifts, and they just amplified immensely just with them being in the environment for a short period of time.
Yeah.
It's wild. It is a wild experience. Did you have any of those experiences before?
Yeah. 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 Early on, years and years ago, because I was friends with him since I was a teenager, and we were the type that, I would know when he was calling. I would, there would be so many things, that dreams, if he was in a dream and I talked to him, he had the same dream. Things like that were just kind of led you to say, what is this? And I do believe that a lot of that was, the little breadcrumbs along the way that were kind of trying to wake me up. But it wasn't until his passing that there was kind of that soul shock and that merging of, our souls, and that really, really amplified things. Yeah. Because I really went through a deep soul shock with that.
Haven't had that experience yet. Can you elaborate on that more?
Well, it's just kind of like that. It's kind of the way that I've described it is kind of losing or what it felt like at the time, loss, losing the other half of your soul. And even though, we would go periods of time without talking or anything, there was always this underlying unconditional love. And I've experienced a lot of loss, grandparents, parents, friends, uncles, you name it. I have a lot of people on the spirit side, but this loss was so much greater, I guess, in terms of pain, that it really sent me down a dark path for no apparent reason. Even my current husband, he's very understanding, but I really had to explain this to him, like why this really shook me the way that it did. And it wasn't really until I learned, because I kind of knew he was my twin flame, but when I had looked into it years ago, it was so romanticized that I thought, I kind of,
Yeah. Cringy.
I get
Yeah.
some of that, and it's cringy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cringy.
So,
And I think a lot of people, here's my gripe about twin flames and why we don't talk about it more here
yeah.
with the many guests I've had. And it's because it is so romanticized. And the problem that I have with it is that people are so quick to give up to their own power, their own inner authority,
Hmm.
and their own ability to make choices and take action on them. And that bugs me.
Right.
No, don't go into disempowerment. I'm not saying that you did. I just know
Yeah,
that happens for a lot. When you research it, that's the stuff you find. And it's like, oh,
it
hell
is.
no. You have choices. You're making choices. I could have made a choice any given moment.
Right, right.
No, no, we have to take
Exactly.
accountability. So
Yeah.
that's a big
And
part of it. Yeah,
yeah, and they're on a deeper level, they're mirroring, us. They are a part of us. It is our soul. And there's,
absolutely.
different types of twin flames if you get into all of that. But there's a reason, and we have a plan, and we come to this earth with a plan, with a purpose. Mine took an exit, and I know that with that we must have agreed on this path together because he comes through a lot, and he is, omnipresent. He's always with me. I feel that. I know that. But again, yeah, regular twin flame stuff, and even looking into it after the fact, it was so hard to get to the bottom of it, and now it really bothers me a lot of the things that are out there about that because it can be the same as a soulmate, but it's not necessarily.
No, because I would say my
Yeah.
husband now is absolutely my soulmate. For
Yeah.
all intents and purposes, we're happy little peas in a pod over here, but that was an entirely different experience in terms of the energy that was occurring between
Right.
us. Like, I had never experienced more telepathy or more empathy than I did when we were in each other's vicinity. And I could feel them if they were about a block away. It was intense. And then the communication happening in dreams was something else. I love my spouse. My spouse is amazing. We don't have that kind of an energetic situation. And thank God, because I think that would be a lot to live with. I
It
don't
is.
think we're meant to do that in that way. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if after that transition, if you then found you had a greater capacity for compassion, for peace, for more nurturing and softness.
Yeah, I really do believe that that helped. I mean, I felt like I took on all of the good parts of him, and that was kind of absorbed. And I have found some research that really supports that. So, that's comforting to know. But some people, they don't know. And actually, one of the readings I did a while back, I brought through this lady's this gentleman, and it ended up being her twin flame. And it wasn't until I compared it to, because I hadn't felt anything else like that. And I thought, so I brought it up, and she said, I wondered, she said, he passed, it had been like 20 or 30 years ago. She said, I can never stop thinking about him. She said, I don't know why. She said, sometimes I think I'm going crazy, but he's just always there in the back of my mind. And it wasn't until I really went into this and it really opened her eyes to see that that's a thing, and it really can shake your soul. And it's not meant to leave you. It's meant to guide you.
I know what the experience is like having gone through it, being spiritually open. I can't imagine what that would be like going through it and not hearing your guides and not having awareness of clairempathy or clairvoyance or clairsentience. Because for me, all of those things opened substantially. Like, I think the lever went up to 200% more.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
even before we met in person, there was a moment where I could actually hear communication happening. And I would have thought I was crazy had I not been in and open to this stuff already. But I heard in my mind, are you going to run? That day, I was like, why would I run? You run. I was feeling a little cocky that day.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
not my nature,
The
but that
typical
day I did.
runner chaser dynamic. Yeah.
And I didn't know about that. So it
Okay.
just goes to
Yeah,
show that that is part of the path sometimes, that sometimes we're
it
just meant
is.
to be near each other for an energetic boost to
Right.
catalyze some lessons to get things rolling. And my self-love did kick off at that moment
Yeah.
in a big way. Because it's like, oh yeah, had I chosen to stay in my shadow, had I chosen to not self-develop or any of those things, oh, I could have made a big mess. Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's not very many people that can have a long-term relationship with their twin flame because the energy is so intense and it's just a
That would be so
constant
much.
mirror.
So
Yeah.
much to live with. No, thank you. No.
Yeah. No. Right.
I like my sanity. I like not
Yeah.
hearing other people's thoughts on a regular basis unless I choose to.
Absolutely.
We got way off track, but talk to me more about your mediumship, about your coaching, about what really brings it to life for you these days now that you've post graduated from Arthur Findlay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've just really been enjoying talking to people about, grief. And at the same time, I'm still developing myself. I'm still learning. I'm still, getting to the bottom of who I am. And I just know that, well, originally I thought mediumship was it. That's what I'm going to do. But I wanted to take it a step further. Like I said, because of my own experience, I wanted to be able to help people through the process because an awakening is it's almost more than, you can handle. It really takes you to the edge. And having someone who's been through it that you can talk with, very vital. And uh, some people don't feel like they can open up with just a therapist or something like that. Whereas, like I said, with, the spiritual aspect, that really brings it further.
And that
And
is a
so that's what
time
I,
when a lot of people find themselves in psychiatric holds and needing assessments because they have no one else to open up to. And then they start questioning their sanity when
right.
very real, very, very real things are happening to them. And it's not schizophrenia.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that if I hadn't been open to spirituality, I would have had to check myself in somewhere.
And sometimes people do, and they go to a
Yeah.
therapist that isn't familiar with the spiritual, that hasn't had those experiences. And so the person doesn't know, and they're trying to do, in their
Right.
best with what they've been taught for their profession.
Yeah.
And
And then they
sometimes it
end up on
doesn't
the
give the
wrong
best.
medication.
Yeah, or on medication that they maybe don't even need to be when
Right.
what they're experiencing is actually natural, is valid, and there are just things they need to understand. I remember
Right.
when I saw you when you came for IEMT, I think at that point you were still questioning some things, like you were still questioning clairvoyance and how the impressions worked and came in and out. And so we kind of
Yeah.
sat and had a chat about that. And it's like, no, this is so mundane. You're doing it so
Yeah.
many times a day, you don't even realize you're
Don't
doing it
even
because it's
realize it.
part of everyday life, because it's natural,
Right.
it's
Right.
normal.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of those over the years, those, random impressions or things I would see in my third eye, that really started to make sense. And now I know, well, I'm either picking up psychically or mediumistically. So it all made sense to me then. And most people are capable of that. And, maybe they're not meant to do it professionally, but they're most certainly meant to hear their loved ones, one way or another and know that they're with them. So I really enjoy, helping people through that.
Yeah. How would you say when you're doing your readings, it comes through for you the most? Are you more clairvoyant? Is it a blend of clairempathy or claircognizance? What is it like
Really,
mostly? Or how much does it vary,
clairvoyance.
I should say?
Yeah, yeah. Clairvoyance is my strongest claircognizance, I would say next, and sometimes clairaudient. That's not a regular clair that I've exercised, but I take it. I get more clairaudience for myself, and that was some of the earliest signs I knew that this was, you know, which direction this was going to take, because I was hearing it, and I started really paying attention to discernment and kind of my thoughts. And one thing I like to tell people is to kind of sit, you know, quiet alone and just have some dialogue with yourself and pay attention to where these thoughts are coming from, because it really does matter. There's, my twin flame, he comes in over here, my imagination is up here, my third eye is right here, and so it's fun to kind of play around with where it's coming in at, kind of your antennas, and then you can kind of start to make sense of
And then I would say animal communication is even different still.
it. Is
Sometimes I catch myself and I'm seeing things from their perspective, from like through their eyes, and then there are other times where I'm feeling things in their body, and so it's all different places. But it is so important, no matter what kind of readings we're doing, that it is really just saying it as we're experiencing it. I find that has the most value, and it changes a lot. So it was not a helpful question, because after thinking about it, it's like, Amanda, you know this, you know that it changes per spirit, that spirit is always going to have different things that they're stronger and better at. You say you're more clairaudient on your own, and it could just be that you haven't read for someone that has a loved one in spirit that's very vocal.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's going to come, and you're going to be like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's
that
just
does.
that spirit's ability. Yeah.
Right, right. And they tend to, how do I put this? Like when I saw it a lot at like Arthur Finley, and when I practice with other mediums, is they'll kind of pick up on the strength of that medium, and what kind of, depending on what they're going to bring through, is like what your strength is. And so yeah, absolutely.
It's just the best fiber optic connection that can happen is the one they're going to
Right,
go for. The
right.
connection that's got the most juice and charge and stability is the one that they'll use.
Yeah,
But they are pretty resourceful. And then again, so are we. And that's just it. It's amazing to me that there are people who still don't know that they have this naturally, that it's available. And that, yeah, our loved ones, for the most part, are good. They don't need anything, they don't want anything. They just are bathed in love 24 hours a day. And their biggest concern at the end of the day is us when we're feeling bad about them.
absolutely. And that's one of the hardest things as a medium, is to hear people think that their loved ones are upset with them. And it's like, no, that couldn't be further from the truth. They support you, and no matter what, anything that you could even ever want for yourself, they're your cheerleader. They want that for you. Anything you want, they want. And there's no resentment, there's no fear, there's nothing like that on the other side. So it hurts my heart sometimes when people are so fearful, or think that there is some tension there. There isn't.
More often than not, that's ego, that's self imposed, that's the ways that, they're blaming themselves and wishing that they had done differently. My hair is
Right.
bugging me today. um, but it's always our own stuff. It's very rarely. I've not had, okay, that's not entirely fair. I have had one or two readings where spirit was not angry, but it's like, man, yeah, you kind of did that, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
But there
They
was
like
no
to bring it to your
standing
attention.
resentment. It's just like, yeah, you kind of went there. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not in a harsh way. And it's not, there's no residual anger. There's none of that. I've had that experience with Source. And I think I told you about it when my ferret had passed. And then I had the realization of, this is where we come from. This is where we go back to. And even though consciously I knew she had died and that I should be sad, emotionally, I couldn't get there because I wanted for nothing. All of my needs were met, and there was just this palpable love energy. And it's like,
Yeah.
if we each felt that once as standard human beings, if it was
Right.
standard issue and everybody went through that, the world would be
Yeah.
vastly different.
Yeah.
Because we would
Pet
just know
loss
we
is
belong to each other.
right. Yeah. Pet loss is so significant. I think, people don't give it enough credit for, as rough as that can be. So it really helps to know that there's more to this. If you don't, I mean, it's just such a tremendous loss, because it's that unconditional love. There's no replacing it. And to believe that it just dies, and breaks my heart.
And that's the connection that we have every day. It's not like mom or dad. Once you leave home, you don't resume, that proximity, that closeness, whereas your fur friends, they're there everywhere. I can't go, I can't do anything in this house without 5 little pairs of eyes watching what I'm doing. And that's because the ferrets are in a separate cage and they can't follow. Yeah, and so it is really profound, and I think a lot of people don't understand the level of grief that does happen.
Right.
And so when you're doing your mediumship work, you're willing to read people who have lost their loved ones, but also their pets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes they show up. I don't even have to try. I haven't kind of trained myself in any capacity to be necessarily a pet medium, but they make their appearances, and I love that, because sometimes, you know people, it might not be in the forefront of their mind. They're waiting to hear from grandma, mom, dad, and then grandma, mom, or dad brings through, their dog, and it's like that's what they needed to hear, actually.
And it's different energy because they come through unapologetic. They're nothing but excitement and love. And, sometimes loved ones in spirit, especially if they passed and they had guilt or shame about the way they treated you. Some
Hmm.
of them can be kind of sheepish coming in and not be so ready and upfront to talk, but pets aren't like that at all.
No.
They come through and it's this big rush of happy childhood energy. And for a medium, that just hits us and we're like, oh, wow, they're cutting
Yeah,
the line here.
it is a lovely energy. It is.
Okay. And so when people book with you for a reading, what is that process like?
Well, they're able to do so on my website at it's guidedlights.net. And yeah, so I offer many different types of readings: grief counseling, twin flame, even soulmate, any profound loss, really. I love to help you through it. And so, yeah, I offer all of that on my website.
That is fantastic that you're out there doing this work. Just as a fellow light worker, it always lights me up and brings me joy. Just that you were able to do all the things that you wanted to do and you set out to, it just makes me smile every single day knowing that you're now out there doing this work and
Thank you.
helping other people find their way, find their comfort and their healing.
Thank you. Yes, yes. And you've been a part of that for me, and you helped heal me. And yeah, so
You did
I
that on your own.
appreciate you as well.
I'm not responsible for what clients choose to do or choose not to do. You came to do the work, and that's the best way. Yeah, and it's the same for when people come and see you and they're working through that grief or they're wanting to connect with their loved ones. It takes a certain level of openness to come for a reading. If you're coming for a reading and you're booking a reading and you're wanting so and so to be the first through the gate and you have all these conditions and constraints, you're strangling the energy out of the reading.
Right.
Just stay home at that point. It's
Just
not helpful.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Got to be open minded, or you're really doing yourself a disservice.
What do you recommend when people come and see you to get the most out of their readings and time with you?
Well, just that openness, no expectations, no keywords, because you're just going to be disappointed, and just be open so that your loved ones know, they can tell if there's a resistance there. And really, it's all about just proving, that life continues. So just not having any expectations, and willingness to just be open. Yeah.
Do you require them to believe in the process?
No, I don't. Just openness, curiosity, goes a long way. If you're curious, give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen?
Absolutely. And any other experiences that you'd like to share today?
Nothing that comes to mind. I don't think. Just yeah. I just know that this is what I want to do, and I'm just getting started. Yeah, that's it. I haven't offered, I haven't done any in-person readings, but there is the option, if that is something that someone wants, that can be arranged. You know, just know that there's options. If you resonate with me, just give it a shot.
Yeah. And also that it works. It doesn't have to be in person. It works just as well virtually.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It could be a Facebook chat message is what I've learned. It
I
doesn't even
know.
require, yeah, it doesn't
Or
face.
right. Some mediums do just email versions. I don't know how that would
I did. I did for a long, long time. One of the practices that one of my teachers taught me was a letter from a loved one. And essentially, what I would do is my clients would find me usually through referral because I didn't even really put it out there that I was offering this. And like I said, I did that one emotion code reading, and then intuition was wide open. I had extra information. And she turned around and said, oh, I want to book a mediumship reading. And it was like, oh, okay. And off we went. And from there, referral after referral came. And so I wasn't necessarily ready to step into that work in the way that it was ready to move through me. Those things are not always paired at exactly the same place. And so
Right.
most of my people would contact me via email, and I wouldn't have any knowledge or insight about them. All I would know is maybe their name and their email, and then the series of questions that they wanted to ask. And so I did it in a way that was really kind of what they call a blind reading. And I preferred that because I couldn't get in my own way, and I also wasn't going to be swayed by anything. And that way I
Right.
knew the impressions I was getting were purely what I was getting. So I would
Right.
sit and meditate for about, 10, 15 minutes, get into the right vibration. It took me a lot longer back then.
Yeah.
And I would sit and I would first write out all of the impressions that I had about their loved one, about their life, about their relationship. Sometimes it would answer some of the questions that they'd ask, sometimes it wouldn't. And then from there, I would take a break, go do something else, have a bath. That's my solution to everything in
Yeah.
life. Have a bath with Epsom salts.
Very
Again, it's
grounding.
just raising vibration, getting me into the right state. And then I would actually allow their loved one to channel through me and write to their loved one.
Okay.
So it was
Yeah.
a letter from their loved one in spirit, which is incredibly vulnerable and uncomfortable of a way to do a mediumship reading, but I'm glad I did it that way because it really developed me.
I like that.
And again, it was kind of Tyler Henry style. Don't have to know you, don't have to know anything about you. And here's what I'm getting, and here's what I've got, and here's what they say.
Yeah. We actually did some
Sometimes it would be,
practicing at Arthur Finley with that,
did
you know.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of our practice things that we did. So yeah, I could see where that would be valuable and how and why someone would want
Yeah.
that.
It was at times, and then there were other times where I got in my own way because it's a huge amount of pressure. And so people would be responding back, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive and shocking. And sometimes it scared me a little. It made me uncomfortable at how accurate that was. And I really didn't want that life or to be known for that specifically. So for me, it was like, I'd prefer not to. And
Yeah,
then I could see that some people were kind of getting really addicted to the process and they really wanted to rely on me. And it's like, no, I'd really rather you become empowered
right.
through knowing you could connect to your loved one. So that's when I kind of stepped away from that and went in a different direction. But
Yeah,
it is entirely possible. And so readings, they don't have to happen face to face, they don't have to happen over the phone. It really depends on the medium. I know some mediums who have to hear their sitter's voice because that's how they connect best. And they use that energy to connect. I know some readers who have to hold the hand of their sitter because they need that kinesthetic touch to connect. I think
yeah.
it just depends on the abilities.
Yeah, I suspect that that might be that way for me. I feel like seeing and hearing them is where I really get the connection, but I wouldn't know until I gave it a shot.
Yeah. And I hate to affirm this out loud, but I'm trying to stop affirming this out loud. One thing I've had a hard time with is names. Names do not always come through clear for me. And what I
Mm,
did learn is if the sitter tells me the name of the person they're trying to connect with, I can actually use that energetic signature and follow that all the way through to the person and get more information that way. So
okay,
it's
that
good,
makes
I think, if you're
sense.
going to go for a reading to ask the reader, hey, how do you connect best? They'll
Yeah,
tell you, they'll know.
right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I think you kind of nailed it with the open mind, no expectations,
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
present. You don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to
Right.
bobblehead. You don't have to give anything away at all if you don't want to,
Right.
but
Yeah.
just
Less is
let
more.
the energy be clear. Yes, less
Yeah.
is definitely more. Yeah, I usually tell people I don't do readings anymore, but when I did, I would usually say, hey, hold the stories for later. Just yes,
Right.
no, maybe on things, and then you can tell me afterwards, but let me
Right.
get it all the way out.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to know anything. And even feedback, it's kind of like, okay, wait, give me, let me get going here and then you can let me know. But absolutely, it just really gets in the way.
Because at the end of the day, we're still human. And of course, we want, the sitter, the person who's receiving the reading, to have the best possible connection and experience. We have hearts, so,
Right.
so if you share
Right.
something with me, of course, I want the best outcome and it will cloud my judgment 100%.
Right. Right.
Okay. So You're working with readings, you're doing coaching, and you're doing animal communication. Anything on the horizons?
Not much. I'm going to be looking into working at some metaphysical fairs this spring and just kind of getting out there and doing as much as I can. Hoping possibly going back to Arthur Finley this coming year. Not sure if that's going to happen yet, but that would be ideal. I definitely will be going eventually again because it's just wonderful, you know. And in
Would you
England, why wouldn't I want to go?
would you repeat the same trainings, or are there different levels that you would then pursue or different things?
I would probably go to a level up. The one that I did was pure mediumship, evidential, and they have it on more of a professional level and higher,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah.
Yeah. But what a journey from grief, bereavement, loss, spiritual awakening, straight through to stepping into your empowerment and now being a resource for others.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. And it's only been 2 years that I really set out and started thinking about this. So I look forward to continuing and seeing where else it leads because there's so much to explore. There really, really is. And even with hypnotherapy, that's one of the things that really interests me, being able to bring through messages that way too. A lot of the great mediums did that, and it's very fascinating to me. So it's
I mean,
not
Edgar
off the
Casey.
table. Yeah. Yeah.
That was Edgar Casey's MO, was self-hypnosis. Absolutely. And then because of that connection with mediumship and hypnotherapy, I do it an entirely different way. So as I said, I don't do readings anymore. And that's because I would much rather just put people in trance and have them have their own experience. It's just so much more profound that way. Not to say that
That's amazing.
a reading is wonderful, particularly if you can't get into a space of openness or vibration. You might need to get a few mediumship readings before you come see someone like me, because I'm going to need you to be past that grief. I'm going to need you to
Yeah.
be a little further along to be able to open that door at that level. So readings are profound and important. It's just very, very different. I find a different layer of catharsis that can happen.
I believe that. Yeah. I would have to be more open. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does. Hypnosis is beautiful, but it does take a different level of vibration and presence and openness, I think. So, yeah. That's why the two still really work well together.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so much to explore. I've only just
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a guest today. In the next little while, I will do my best to update the show notes. And if someone is looking for you, guidedlights.net is the best way to get hold of you.
Yes, that's right.
All right. All right, soulful seekers. If you're wanting to explore mediumship reading, animal communication, or you're working through some grief, you've just had a chance to get to know Jen. Reach out, have a conversation with her, and see if you would be compatible to work on your journey together. Otherwise, stay happy, stay healthy, stay well, but most of all, stay inspired. Bye for now.